Hey guys, welcome back to Your Lake Fork Guide. Got another episode of the Guides Network today. Hey, we're in that time of year. It's fall has set in. We're kind of transitioning into winter right now as we speak. Seems to be happening a little fast and furious as far as the water temps dropping. And I tell you what, that can make the bite really, really tough. It can make fish lethargic. It can take a lot of techniques, a lot of baits out of the equation. But one technique that always seems to shine when it gets tough in the fall and winter transition, and even throughout winter, is going to be the Alabama rig. For any of you that follow tournament bass fishing and have followed the history of bass fishing, you're probably well aware of the firestorm that was created when the Alabama rig first came about in the bass fishing world. There's a reason that it's banned on the top level circuits. It is absolutely one of the very best ways you can catch big bass in the winter months. So today we're going to dig into it. Hey guys, one quick plug before we get started into today's instructional. Hey, we just got our new shirts in. We got some Your Lake Fork Guide Fish Life shirts, brand new, long sleeve, moisture wick, dry fit type shirts. The material on these shirts, well, first let me tell you, we also got a little patriotism, a little bit of American greatness mixed into that shirt as well. Go check it out at yourlakeforkguide.com. We are fortunate to partner with Grunt Style, which is just a great company. All the employees are veterans, veteran-owned company. They do an amazing job. Stand behind these shirts are guaranteed for life, by the way, by Grunt Style. Stand behind their work and the quality of material on this shirt. This is not your normal go down to Academy and buy your scratchy dry fit shirt. This is a very high-end, very nice shirt. So go check that out, please, at yourlakeforkguide.com, linked below. All right, let's talk about the Alabama rig. You know, what happens, guys, is we start getting in the winter and those fish pull back out of those creeks. They're going to relate to the bait fish. And sometimes the bait fish are going to move around and suspend and whatever. And these fish are always going to stick close to those bait fish, kind of following them around in the winter months. It's just kind of what they do. And when you're talking about imitating a ball of bait fish, there's just nothing else that's even close to comparing to something like this right here. So we're going to talk about the areas we fish, how I retrieve this bait, everything that I do to have success on the Alabama rig in the winter. But first, before we do that, let's get you set up on the gear so that you'll know exactly what equipment you're going to need to be effective throwing the Alabama rig. We'll start with my rod and reel and line. I think this is an important part of Alabama rig fishing. You're going to need a big rod. This is obviously going to be an awkward bait to cast. It's going to take a big rod to handle that. It's also a very heavy bait, so it's going to put a lot of stress on your reels. For that reason, I love to go to the Lew's LFS Super Duty G. This is a small profile. I'm not a big fan of those big heavy duty reels that create a big profile in your hand, and they're kind of awkward to hold when you're used to holding small profile bait casters most of the time. The one thing that I love about this Lew's Super Duty LFSG, it is a very low profile version of a high line capacity Super Duty heavy duty type reel that is built to handle heavy baits in hard fishing conditions. This thing holds up. It's a tank of a reel, but it's low profile and it's not heavy. It comes in right at 7 ounces, so it's a really light reel still, and fits just perfectly. As you can see, I can palm the whole reel so comfortably. I don't feel out of place, and I can still handle the stress and strain that throwing big awkward baits like an Alabama rig will give you. For a rod, I'm using the 6 Sense Fishing Lux Series, 8-foot heavy with a moderate fast tip. Hey, you're gonna need a big rod to throw this bait a long way, which you need to do to throw that big awkward Alabama rig a long way. You're gonna need a big rod. This is absolutely the rod to handle that. 8-foot heavy, moderate fast tip, 6 Sense Lux Series rod. Online, there's a few different schools of thought. I know a lot of guys that like to throw braid on their Alabama rigs, because bottom line is there's a lot of money hanging off this tree right here, and those guys don't want to lose those baits, and so they'll throw braid. I don't think that's the proper way to go. In fact, I think that will actually cause you to lose more baits if you throw it on braid. Braid does not hold up really well to a lot of this on every single cast. And when you're slinging a bait that weighs as much as this one does, there's a lot of shock every time you cast the bait. I actually prefer to go to really heavy test monofilament line. 20, 25, even 30-pound line is fine. I personally think 20 does the job for me just fine, but you can go to 25 if it makes you feel more comfortable. Just get you some Berkley big game monofilament line. That stuff is tough as nails. You're not going to have to worry about memory when you're throwing a big heavy bait and chunking and winding it like you are on this technique. But the bonus of that monofilament line is it has that stretch in it, which helps you absorb the shock of casting a big heavy bait like that all day. Makes your knot strength hold up and be much, much better. Also, as we'll talk about a little bit later, with these open hooks, it allows you to give that fish time to get the bait before you rip the hook away from him. Whereas if you're throwing braid, you're going to put immediate tension on that fish, and sometimes, especially with these winter fish, you can pull the bait away from the fish if you're using braided line. All right, let's talk about our Alabama rig itself. Now guys, there's a bunch of Alabama rigs on the market. There's a lot of good quality Alabama rigs on the market. This one right here is made by Smash Tech, called the Smash Rig. I like the blades. I'm a big fan of the blades. I think we're throwing a big wire bait ball looking thing at them. The more action and the more flash and the more looking like a bait ball we can get it, the better. I don't think you can really do too much when it comes to an Alabama rig. If you could, the Alabama rig wouldn't be what they were biting in the first place, in my personal opinion. So I go with the 8-bladed Smash rig from Smash Tech. And then here's the big deal for me. 6 cents Divine swim bait jig heads. These are irreplaceable on my Alabama rig, and I'm going to tell you why. There's one reason. They come with a screw lock right here on the shank of the hook. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So you'll see that screw lock right there around the shank of the hook. Now that is a big deal when you're talking about Alabama rig fishing, because if you've ever sat down and put all the pieces on an Alabama rig, all the parts together to fill out your Alabama rig, get all your jig heads and your snaps, make sure all your snaps are snapped up good, then get all your swim baits on your jig heads. It's one of the more time-consuming rig-up processes we have in all bass fishing techniques. And that screw lock being on that head means that these baits will last and last and last. I literally put these baits on a couple weeks ago now, and just today alone caught several nice fish on this rig. And as you can see, these swim baits, they aren't going anywhere. They're stuck on that jig head. I will not have to waste any time in my boat, or very minimal time in my boat, changing out swim baits. Really the only time I have to is when a fish short strikes it and bites the tail completely off. That's just about the only time that I have to change my baits out on my Alabama rig, when I use the 6 cents Divine swim bait heads. Now you'll notice I've got a couple of underspin heads on here, and you're probably thinking, man, does he want even more blades? Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I have thrown all owner flashy swimmer hooks on an Alabama rig before, and I think that's good. But to be honest with you, when I rigged this up a couple weeks ago, I ran out of my 1/8 ounce jig heads, because the jig heads that I typically use on the Alabama rig are going to be the 1/8 ounce swim bait jig heads from 6 cents. One thing that I do think is important is getting the lightest jig heads that you can. These are 1/8 ounce jig heads. All of these jig heads, even the underspins, are all 1/8 ounce jig heads. I think that's important because this bait is heavy enough. It's so heavy and so awkward to throw already as it is. You start adding any more weight than that and it becomes sketchy at best, you might say, trying to cast this Alabama rig all day. Plus it will literally physically wear you out if your Alabama rig starts getting too heavy. For the swim baits that I'm actually putting on this Alabama rig, I really like Smash Tech Custom Bait Smash Tail Junior. This is a small swim bait, 3.5 inch. It has a very tight kick, which I think is good. I think when you've got that many baits going, if you get too much of this, too much wide wobbling action is not great on an Alabama rig. You want kind of a tight, subtle kicking swim bait. This one right here, Smash Tail Junior from Smash Tech Baits, fits that bill absolutely perfectly. These are little fish catching machines. Other baits, you know, I know the Kitech Fat Swing Impact is probably the most popular bait in this category. If you're talking about these smaller paddle tail swim baits, the Kitech Fat Swing Impact is the most popular one, I think, out there across the country. I will not throw a fat swing impact on an Alabama rig. What I will do is throw the regular Kitech swing impact. Has a much thinner head, has a much more tight, more subtle kick than the fat swing impact, which has the widest kick you could imagine. So I think, in my opinion, a tighter kick is a better deal for me. Smash Tail Jr. from Smash Tech Custom Baits gets it done. Okay, that's how I set up all my gear and set up my Alabama rigs for success in the winter. Now let's talk about where I'm throwing this thing. For me in the wintertime, fish really seem to utilize bridges. If you're fortunate to have a lake like we do at Lake Fork that has a lot of bridges on it, fish will use bridge columns and bridge corners a lot in the wintertime. Big fish, I'm not talking about just fish, but big fish will use those bridge corners and bridge pilings throughout the wintertime. Those bait balls can suspend and move up and down in the water column based on the temperature of the day. They get a warm day in the wintertime, bright day, they can rise up the water column easy on those pilings. If it's a really cold day, a nasty cold front blows through, they can drop down extremely deep on those bridge pilings. It's just the easiest way for the bait fish to have cover and change depths, which means change water temperatures, is as fast and efficiently as possible without burning any extra energy in the wintertime. So I think that's the reason the bait gathers on the bridges, and because the bait gathers there, like I said, these bass are gonna kind of pull out and follow the bait around wherever it goes. It ends up on the bridges, the bass end up on the bridges as well. In fact, the guy that made the Alabama rig famous in the bass fishing world, Mr. Paul Elias, when he won the Lake Guntersville tournament and blew everybody out on the Alabama rig, he was fishing it on bridge corners and pilings after a cold front in the late fall. That's the exact scenario that gave us the reputation of the Alabama rig. A couple other places that I really like throwing them are going to be road beds. I think road beds are really good. Deep road beds are really good in the wintertime. We have several of those on Lake Fork. They work really well. So if you have something like that on your lakes, that would be an ideal place to check out and go see if this pattern will work for you. Also pond dams, if you have any old pond dams in there. And I really like in the wintertime, now in the summertime we fish pond dams too, and we kind of fish the top side of them. In the wintertime, I really love the base of the pond dam. So you've got the top of the pond dam here, right where the ground's flat, right where it starts to turn up, that little groove right down in there. I really like fishing an Alabama rig at the base of pond dams in the wintertime. Don't really have a great explanation for it. It's just been really good to me. It's something where I noticed some fish on my electronics there one winter several years ago, and it's been a reliable deal every winter since. It's really worked out well for me. It's something that maybe other people aren't hitting as much because I don't really ever see other guys fishing them. Don't see a lot of people fishing in the wintertime, period. One of the best parts about winter fishing, right? But the base of pond dams seems to hold really good groups of quality bass in the wintertime. So once you found some of these types of areas and you've identified some of them that you're confident are holding quality groups of bass, you've seen them on your electronics, you really need to pay attention and take note. What depth are these fish relating to? Are they on the bottom or are they suspended? They will move up and down in the water column day to day in the wintertime, depending on how much sunshine we get, what the night temperature was the night before. All these things can change. So once you've located these fish, it's very, very, very important for you to take note of what depth are they holding at, what structure are they relating to. Are they on the bridge piling? Are they on the crest of the pond dam? Are they on the base of the pond dam? Are they on top of the road bed? Are they off the side of the road bed? They will move day to day like that on you, so you really got to pay attention to that depth. Now, the easiest thing is if they're on the bottom, it's as simple as it gets, or if they're close to the bottom, it's as simple as it gets. You make long bomb cast, let your strip line, let your Alabama rig fall all the way to the bottom, point your rod down and just start slowly reeling it in. Just a medium retrieve will work in this scenario. The ones that are a little harder to get are when they're suspended. What I can tell you is, for most people that I've seen, your Alabama rig is always running significantly shallower than you believe it is. People think they're getting their Alabama rigs down to these suspended fish, and most of the time they're not. They're 5, 6, 7 foot under the surface. If the fish are suspended 12 or 15 foot down, most people never present the bait to the fish when they're dealing with suspended bass. As a general rule of thumb, if you rig up an Alabama rig with 1/8 ounce jig heads, it's gonna fall about 1.5 to 2 feet per second. That part's easy. That part you can look up anywhere online. You can find out how fast does a bait fall when it's rigged with a certain amount of weight, all this stuff. Like, you can look up what every bait does online. That's an easy problem to solve right there. So you can figure that one out on your own, I have no doubt. The deal is, though, once people figure out how fast their bait falls, as soon as it hits that depth, they'll engage their reel and they'll start reeling. And 9 times out of 10 with an Alabama rig, it has so much drag, people just are turning the handle too fast. They're retrieving the bait too fast. And so the bait will fall down, and as soon as they click the reel, it'll go, and it starts climbing. With all the drag that this creates in the water, even with 1/8 ounce jig heads on here and all that weight, there's so much drag there that when you get your bait on a tight line and start reeling it, you have to go extremely slow to keep that bait at an even level without bringing it up in the water column. So I'll tell you what, guys, how about I get up on the front deck and I show you guys exactly how I'm retrieving this Alabama rig to make sure I'm keeping it at a steady depth. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and make a nice cast out here. All right, we're gonna count our bait down. Okay, it's gotten a depth. I'm gonna point my rod down and I'm gonna reel it. Once my line's tight, I just want to turn the handle about this fast right here. It's important though that you don't go much faster than this right here. Even if I had, say, a 6-to-1, I really wouldn't want to go much faster than about this right here. Anything faster than that, like this, that's going to make that bait climb. You start reeling the bait like this, it's going to climb. All the drag, all the resistance that Alabama rig has, it will climb if you reel it kind of at a normal medium to slow speed. You really have to slow that bait down to ensure that it stays at an even depth when you're dealing with suspended fish. So once you've got your countdown figured out, you got your bait to depth, make sure you're reeling that bait slow enough. You know, you want to be careful with your hook set on the Alabama rig, guys. You'll actually feel fish come up and hit this thing. Even with those open jig hooks, open jig head hooks that we're using, they'll come up and thump this thing and not get it. They just won't have it. You'll swing and you'll miss, and then the fish is gone. But one thing you can do, if you can just keep reeling until that fish loads up, you will catch just about every fish. And on an Alabama rig, usually once you got them on there, they don't come off. There's not a lot of weight right there on the jig head where the fish is connected to it. It's got extra hooks that sometimes get in their body and stuff and help keep them pinned. You don't lose very many fish on an Alabama rig when you get them hooked good, but it's important to make sure that you don't go to herking and jerking and swinging too soon, because they will bump it before they commit to it and eat it. And once you feel them bump it and load up, just pull into it to the side like that right there. Keep your rod tip bent up, and you'll have them pegged. All right, guys, well, that's just about everything I know about how to catch wintertime bass on the old Alabama rig. Hey, try those tips out. I certainly hope it helps. Go check out SmashTakeBase.com. They do a great job of supporting everything we do here at Your Lake Fork Guide. Really appreciative of them. 6 Cents Fishing as well. Check out 6centsfishing.com. Get you some old screw lock, swim bait jig heads. When you do, punch in the code Your Lake Fork Guide on the checkout screen. You'll get a 10% discount on all orders. Hey, I can't ever thank each and every one of you guys that watch these videos enough. You know, everything that I get to do day to day, living my dream, is all because of each and every one of you. So thank you guys from the very bottom of my heart. I will forever be in y'all's debt. It has been an amazing ride the last few years, watching what has happened in my career, my fishing career, and my life in general has just been, I'm living the dream, guys. So really, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time right here on Your Lake Fork Guide. Once you feel bump and load, just pull into it. Nice. God almighty, son. All right, let me get some more line out there and try that one more time. Sorry. Here, take this Alabama rig. I see you like earrings.